Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with the duel trial from last week, actually. We're going to be talking about Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Today as we play the 2008 Crimson Crisis format. Now, I don't always go out of my way in order to play these time trials, even if they are from a retro format that I like, because usually I don't really want to bother crafting, URs just for a 3-day event. However, I'm going to be rocking the Gladiator Beast Loner because this is actually really close to the Gladiator Beast deck that I played back in 2008, and I just had a ton of nostalgia playing it. So we're going to be going up against the Zombie Loner first here. We're going to start with Normal Summon, Salmonite, set Mirror Force, and Chariot and pass. But this was actually a little bit of a misplay on my part, and that's because I'm holding the Heavy Storm, right? On the opponent's turn, it's not very likely that I'm going to use both these back row, but it is pretty likely that my opponent's going to set at least one, if not multiple cards of their own. So, obviously I would want to use the Heavy Storm to be able to clear their back row, so my Gladiator Beast monsters can attack with no problem. This is the kind of thing you have to consider in Retro Yu-Gi-Oh, right? It's really easy to figure like, oh, old Yu-Gi-Oh is so slow-paced, it's so much easier, but it's a very different beast. Now here my opponent did summon a monster stronger than Salmonite, so I get to use my Mirror Force. So things actually worked out pretty well for me here. If my opponent had set a monster and then 2 face down cards, I would actually be in a kind of rough spot, because I wouldn't really be able to use my Heavy Storm and I would be forced to battle into the face down cards. Again, it's really easy to think like, oh, if you're taking less actions, then old Yu-Gi-Oh is a lot easier, but you have to have a very different mindset going into it. Shrink is a great card to see at pretty much any time when you're playing Gladiator Beast. Now here I am going to use the Heavy Storm, even though I have the War Chariot face down, because when I tag out, one of the monsters I can tag into is a quest, and a quest can add the War Chariot back to my hand, so I'm not worried about losing that. We're going to use Salmonite effect to tag out as well into Bestiari. Even though my opponent doesn't have any face down cards for me to destroy, I wouldn't be able to go into the Geyseris during their next turn, so we're going to summon Bestiari now. And also we have the Shrink and War Chariot, so even though it's a little bit weaker at 1500 attack points, I'm not really worried about it getting battled over here. Gonna set 2 more and then pass. Kind of going off the assumption my opponent doesn't have Heavy Storm because they set 2 face down cards, but they could just be making the same misplay that I am. Okay, nope, they're going to set a monster and then 2 face down cards and pass right back over to us. This is exactly why I pulled Bestiari out of the deck, is so I can summon Geyseris. We're going to use Geyseris effect and target the face down cards here. They're going to chain Bottomless Trap Hole, as well as Shrink on my Geyseris, which is really funny because I was actually about to use my own Shrink on my Geyseris. Why, you ask? Well, if we take a look at Bottomless Trap Hole, it states, when your opponent summons a monster with 1500 or more attack, destroy that monster with 1500 or more attack, and if you do, banish it. So not only does the condition require the monster to have 1500 or more attack, but so does the resolution of the effect. So by my opponent using their own Shrink on my Geyseris, they have actually ensured that it will survive the Bottomless Trap Hole they just activated. We're going to summon Darius, battle going into Goblin Zombie. As it activates, we're going to use the War Chariot to negate. And then now I can swing in with the Geyseris as well. Geyseris gets to tag out for 2 Gladiator Beast monsters. It's going to be Lucari and Hoplomos. And then I'm going to use Darius to tag out into a quest yet again, adding back the War Chariot. And then now we can, during main phase 2, put back all 3 for the Herculenos. Set and then pass. So now we've got the War Chariot, which has the ability to negate and destroy any monster effect, and Herculenos lets me discard a card to negate and destroy any spell or trap card. So we're in a really good spot, and this is kind of your overall end board that you want for a Gladiator Beast. You want to end up in a scenario where you have access to the War Chariot repeatedly through a quest to keep negating their monster effects, and then also the Herculenos to negate their spell trap cards, and often you'll go into Herculenos via Geyseris after you've popped their board. This is how Retro Gladiator Beast played out, and as you can see, in a slower format like this, it's a very effective strategy. Alright, they're going to set a monster and then pass right over to us. We're going to top deck the Bestiari, but I'm going to summon Salmonite. There's no need to, go into Geyseris here and try to pop the face down and give up Herculenos, because even though it's Pyramid Turtle, we can just use the War Chariot in order to negate the effect. And yeah, I wanted to battle with Herculenos here in order to be able to make sure that we ran over the monster. Since I wasn't able to OTK this turn either way, it's fine to slow roll it a little bit. As always, we're tagging out into the quest, getting back the War Chariot, passing it back to the opponent. They're going to try to use the Thunder King in order to battle over the quest. I'm going to use Shrink. They're going to use Shrink. But this interaction is totally fine. Even if I didn't have the ability to use Herculenos here, then obviously if they battle over the quest, we just battle over with Herc and then Bestiari for lethal. But yes, Herculenos can even negate spell and trap cards during the damage step because it negates the activation of it. If a card only negates the effect of a spell or trap card, then that cannot be used during the damage step, I believe. But if it's the activation, then you can. Alright, so yeah, we'll tag into Darius getting the Bestiari, but we don't need the extra bodies here. We can just swing in for lethal. So that is a really, really good example of how Retro Gladiator Beast would play out. Again, once we have a War Chariot, we can just keep going into a quest and keep looping it, and then on top of that we have Herculenos, and you would think we were a modern Yu-Gi-Oh deck with how much negating we were doing, but for 2008, this was pretty exceptional. There were other negate effects in the format, Stardust Dragon being by far the most prominent, Synchros being new at the time, it was used in like everything, but yeah, Gladiator Beast was out here putting out multiple negates, even back in retro Yu-Gi-Oh formats. Let's take a look at our next game here. Alright, here we have a 16-turn game. We are going to be up against some amount of a dark banish deck. It's not a loner, it's one our opponent built for themselves, but it's one where I think they really could have benefited from some more like knowledge of how 2008 Yu-Gi-Oh decks are built and play out, because they forgot the Dark Armed Dragon, which is going to be the most important part of their deck. This style of Dark Return deck was also on the downturn, if I remember right, at this point in the meta, because I believe this is following the ban list where they really went after like Return from a Different Dimension and other cards like that from Dad Return. So you could still make a dark deck with Dark Armed Dragon work really well in this format, but again, my opponent did not include Dark Armed Dragon in their deck. So, okay, with this hand, I'm going to begin with set Hoplamos, Bottomless, and then pass. I don't need to set both Bottomless and D-Prison. That's just a little bit redundant here. And the idea is that hopefully my Hoplamos will survive into my next turn. That way I can use Proving Ground, add Bestiari, and then go into Geyseris. And even if it doesn't survive, we have Monster Reborn. Okay, so they're going to D-Draw, Pitch, Dasher, then Allure, Banish Grepher, Normal Summon Stratos. So I'm going to use the Bottomless on the Stratos here. But the Stratos does get to use its Search here. And they're going to add the Malicious. Now here's another Destiny draw. At this point I realized it probably wasn't just a regular Dark Armed deck, but probably more of a Destiny Hero Turbo deck. More specifically, a Diamond Dude Turbo deck. And that does end up being the case here. However, we're already kind of starting to see my opponent making a little bit of misplays here. There's no real point in summoning Malicious here. The reason you play Malicious in a deck like this is for tribute fodder. For Jinzo, for Caius, the Shadow Monarch, for Light and Darkness Dragon. Those are going to be the big ones that you want to use. Yeah, throwing it out here to chump block a hit is not really the use case for Malicious in this deck. Being a retro Yu-Gi-Oh format, you don't have to be this afraid of getting OTK'd. It's just not going to really happen in 2008 that often. That often. It could, but probably not. Alright, so at the end of the battle, I'm going to tag out for Lucari and Salmonite. Salmonite, when you tag into it, has an effect that lets you search for a Gladiator Beast card when it destroys a monster in battle. This could be a way of getting access to your War Chariot if you didn't open it. Alright, so they're going to end up using Dasher's effect, and sure enough, here is the Diamond Dude from the titular Diamond Dude Turbo. Lightning Vortex, discarding Soul Exchange. These are spell cards that I can tell you from experience did not see play in Diamond Dude Turbo back in 2008. Diamond Dude Turbo is a really interesting deck from back in the day because it could be, you could lean into the turbo part really hard if you wanted to. with cards like Reasoning and Monster Gate. Some variants played that, again, if they were really trying to turbo through their deck. But a lot of them were a little bit more low to the ground. Again, mostly just setting up the graveyard with Malicious, and also using Dasher Effect to, again, summon out things like Jinzo, or to tribute summon Caius, or to summon out like Light and Darkness Dragon, as well as, of course, setting up your Darks in graveyard for the Dark Arm Dragon, which is something I'm keeping my eye on throughout this game. It's something that back in this point in Yu-Gi-Oh! You had to ask all the time if your opponent played like any amount of Destiny Heroes or Dark Monsters. You had to constantly ask them like, how many Dark Monsters engraved? How many Dark Monsters engraved? Especially if you were holding the DD Crow. So they do use their Diamond Dudes to excavate the Rhoda and the Allure. But here we get to use the Proving Ground for Bestiari. Gonna normal summon Bestiari, Monster Reborn, one of my Gladiator Beasts. And then we can tag them into the Geyseris. Actually, there really wasn't too much of a need to do this. I could have just battled over the individual monsters as well, but this is more damage, and I guess there's kind of no point in not doing it, right? But now we can go for Darius plus another Gladiator Beast, Darius getting the Lucari, and now I can pull out the Herculenos. So I didn't end up getting access to my War Chariot, unfortunately, because the Salmonite was destroyed by Lightning Vortex, but we do still have the Herculenos here, and a lot of their engine is going to be fueled by their spell cards. Now, granted, I can't use Herculenos against the cards that Diamond Dude excavated, but it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's just Rhoda and Allure, as mentioned. Okay, so we're going to use Rhoda to add Dark Grepher, but I don't really care about Dark Grepher anymore, because the Maliciouses are already used up, right? So... And they just banished their Plague Spreader zombie, which is their pretty much only way of synchro summoning, so that's not a problem anymore. There goes Gores. That's another thing. I attacked directly so often, and Gores never got dropped. I feel like my opponent's kind of demonstrating here, not saying anything against them, because it's very likely they did not play back in 2008, but like... Again, a lot of people think that, oh, Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so slow, it's so basic, there's so few actions per turn, it's gotta be really, really easy, right? But it's really, really easy to screw up if you don't know what you're doing. It might be a different pace with a more limited pool of cards, but that doesn't mean it's any less skillful. Take it as somebody who tried and failed to top many regionals at this point in time. I did top, you know, enough regionals to qualify for WCQs, but I was not topping the majority of regionals I was playing, and I'll tell you that much. So now my opponents just used up all of their cards. There goes their Lightning Vortex, their Monster Reborn, their Soul Exchange, their Jinzo, and now we're both in top deck mode, although... With my opponent's setup, they really could have had me dead to rights here, especially I don't understand not summoning out the Gores, but we'll take it. Gonna top deck War Chariot, set it, and then pass. They're gonna top deck the Beginning of the End, which I'll also tell you from experience, this spell card actually did not see play in very many Diamond Dude Turbo decks. In my experience, just ended up being a little bit too win more, but... Here they do get to use it in order to draw 3. Gonna summon out, summon out the Dark Grepher and then pass. Alright, going into our turn, we're gonna draw and find the Salmonite, so I'm gonna normal summon that and then pass. You might think, why didn't I set it? Because I'm just gonna take damage here, but I normal summoned it in order to be able to end up using the War Chariot effect. So, when they go to activate Diamond Dude, we're just gonna flip up the War Chariot to negate and destroy. I think that's definitely worth taking 100 damage here. Well, it's going to be a little bit more because they are going to tribute summon for a Jinzo, but... Also, they could have just tribute summoned Jinzo before activating Diamond Dude there, but... Whatever. We're going to set Shrink and then pass. Alright, so now we're looking at probably getting hit with lethal here, except I'm going to summon Armageddon Knight. And if I use Shrink on the Jinzo here, then I have exactly enough to survive by just 100 points. So, hanging on by the slimmest of possible margins, I'm like, please let me top deck any Gladiator Beast that's stronger than Armageddon Knight. And we find the Proving Ground, which is exactly what I needed. We're going to add the Lucari, normal summon Lucari, go to battle phase, battle over Armageddon Knight, and then during main phase 2, I'm going to tag out Lucari for Murmillo in defense mode, Murmillo effect to pop the Jinzo. Now, even if they summon a strong monster, my Murmillo is in defense mode, and I won't just outright lose here. Hoping they don't have any monsters, but they do have another Armageddon Knight. Armageddonite's going to battle over my Murmillo, and once again, I am in top deck mode, just needing to draw any Gladiator Beast that can battle over the Armageddonite. We don't find that, but we do find Smashing Ground, so I'll use that to destroy and then pass. Again, just praying my opponent is out of monsters. They've used all their Armageddonites and Greffers, and I think they are out of monsters in general, because they end up conceding here. I also end up looking at my opponent's deck after the fact, and yeah, they don't have any Dark Armed Dragons in their deck. You know what else they were missing that I totally forgot to mention is Dark Magician of Chaos, unless it was banned by this point. It might have been banned along with Return at this point. I think it was, actually. But if it's not, they definitely need Dark Magician of Chaos, which they can summon out through like Monster Reborn or Tributing Malicious, among other cards. If it's legal, Disc Commander also definitely needs to be in their list. And if all three of those cards are banned, then at that point, I think it's time to pivot away from Diamond Dude Turbo and more into a more like traditional Dark Armed Dragon deck, like Teledad or something. But in any case, I think I have one more game to talk about here, and then we'll finish off. Yeah, I got one more game against the Zombie Loner here. Okay, yeah, so this is gonna be our shortest of the replays, and I think the shortest of them. I was gonna say the only one where I go first, but I went first in that last one, I'm pretty sure. All right, normal summon Lucaria, set Shrink, and then pass. No real need to set MST here because we already have Heavy Storm. But they're gonna summon Thunder King Ryo. During the damage step, I'm gonna use Shrink. They're gonna use Honest. But they also use their own copy of Shrink, and they definitely did not need to use both of these. And in fact, they definitely should have only used Honest here, because they're on like the zombie deck, and there are some light zombies, but I gotta tell you, Honest in zombies was far from typical in 2008. They really should have just made use of their Honest on their light monster while they could, and Shrink, which can be used much more generally, and also during the, well, I guess Honest can be used during the opponent's turn as well. Either way, there's no need to use both of them here, but I'm totally fine with not having to deal with these cards. Honest was kind of one of the reasons why Lightsworn was one of your rougher matchups when you were playing Gladiator Beast at this point in time. That and Necrogardener. Honest and Necrogardener were brutal for Gladiator Beast. Alright, here we're going to go Murmillo and Test Tiger. I was going to use Test Tiger to resummon Murmillo and pop Thunder King, but then they just used Thunder King effect anyway, which is basically the same thing. So, Murmillo tags out for Darius, reviving Lucaria. I'm going to set the Mirror Force and then pass over to my opponent. They're going to summon out the Zombie Paladin. I'm going to use Mirror Force to destroy it. This is light, which I think is why they have Honest in the deck. And yeah, my opponent's going to concede kind of quickly here. But at the same time, like, even if they had a bunch of back row to set, we could have just Heavy Stormed, swung in with the Darius and Lucaria, and kept tagging out and doing Gladiator Beast things. And all that fun stuff. I think, no, I would have needed another monster. I'm pretty sure to be able to make Herculenos. Well, yeah, obviously because it needs 3 materials, but yeah, and I didn't have another way to get another monster in hand. It's important to remember that when you revive a Gladiator Beast with Darius, it's negated, so that Gladiator Beast can't tag out. So only Darius would have been able to tag out here, but that's still fine. We were still, I think, up in that game. So anyway, let's go over to the Loner deck list, and I'll talk about Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! For a little bit. Okay, so yeah, this is the Loner list, and again, this is pretty close to the kind of Gladiator Beast list that I would have had, you know, back in 2008. Some key differences: you definitely don't need 3 Hoplomys. 1 is plenty. Would have taken 2 of those out, put in a 3rd Lucaria and a 3rd Test Tiger. What's kind of cute is that some Gladiator Beast list actually played Rescue Cat because Salmonite is a level 3 beast, so you can Rescue Cat for 2 Salmonite. I think Rescue Cat was legal at 1 at the time, so you could have played that as well. That's very optional, but still kind of cute. The Spell Trap lineup is actually really solid. The only thing you really don't need here is Brain Control, because we're not on Synchro monsters. However, I think the rest of the extra deck should be filled with 9 relevant Synchro monsters. In case you, like, Monster Reborn a tuner, then you can make, like, a Stardust Dragon or something. But I think even if you have Synchro monsters in your extra deck, you wouldn't need Brain Control. I mean, this is also, to be fair, errata to brain control. And I mean, this is like textbook example of why erratas are a bad thing. Brain control is the key card to show why erratas are a bad thing. Because now even going back and playing retro Yu-Gi-Oh, we have to use the errata version of brain control. Meaning that this card functions completely differently than it actually did in 2008. And brain control was very much considered a staple in the majority of decks at the time. So by warping how this staple card functions, you're also warping the format, and it's not truly 2008 Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, this debate's already been had, you know, by many other people, not just me, but I really think that not only are erratas a bad thing, but enforcing them in retro formats is a terrible decision. But anyway, as mentioned, yeah, not only is this Gladiator Beast deck really, really close to the one I played back in 2008, Gladiator Beast in general was probably just about my favorite deck to play back then, so I almost forgot. Oh, I have a story to tell you. Yeah, from this point in time. So, back in 2008, I'm playing Gladiator Beast, the style of list, right, against somebody at our locals, and they were not having it that evening. They were not in a good mood. And, you know, they go to some... In game one, they summon their Dark Armed Dragon, and, you know, they're calling priority. So, like, before you have a chance to use your War Chariot, I'm going to use my my Gladiator Beast, or my Dark Armed Dragon's effect. And I was just like, all right, and Bottomless Trap Hole your Dark Armed Dragon. And this person ends up slamming. This is the maddest I've ever seen somebody playing Yu-Gi-Oh! IRL. They slam their fist on the table and yell, "I hate Gladiator Beast!" and storm out without their cards or mat or anything. And I'm just sitting there, like, speechless. The whole room is speechless. And finally somebody from across the room is like, "Jesus, what'd you do to him?" I threw my arms up and I was like, "I tried to activate Gladiator Beast War Chariot," and then everybody just started laughing. So, good times, good times. Well, not really. Believe it or not, I don't like being yelled at while I play Yu-Gi-Oh! But in any case. Oh, I mixed up the way I told the story. What happened was I was going to use Bottomless, but they called priority with Dark Armed Dragon's effect, and then I was like, okay, Gladiator Beast War Chariot. That's when they said they hated Gladiator Beast, but I digress. So, little funny anecdote just reminded me when I was playing this deck. Yeah, if we get solid learner decks, I love playing these time trial Yu-Gi-Oh! Events. It's like I said, the main reason I don't more often than not is because, like, I'm not about to craft URs to play in a retro format for 3 days. Now, if the time trial, here's what I think. Hot take. Master Duel needs an alt-retro format, but here's how I think you could go about doing it that would be interesting, but still potentially profitable to Konami. Because obviously Konami wants you to spend UR craft points and in turn money to make cards for this retro format, right? So why not have Time Trial be a permanent fixture, and then every week just rotate which retro format it is? Then I would feel much better about spending URs crafting like a pool of old school staples that are banned if I knew that, you know, they were going to continuously cycle through retro formats and at some point I have an opportunity to use it. Then I would be totally down to craft like your Dark Magician of Chaos, Pot of Greed, Dimension Fusion, you know, these URs that I otherwise am not going to touch, because again, I'm not spending UR craft points to play a deck for 3 days. But I digress. This is a point that again has been already discussed quite a bit, so I think that's pretty much all I have to say for now. Thank you as always for watching. Super appreciate your support. Hopefully this video does well. I know this is coming out like a week after the time trial ended, but I had these replays saved. I just want to kind of talk about it for a little bit. So that's going to do it for now. Let's go ahead and move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.